Joining us now on the phone is David Applegate. He's the Senior Science Advisor for Earthquake and Geologic Hazards at the U.S. Geological Survey. Dr. Applegate, we really appreciate your time. Thank you for joining us again.
Sure thing.
In terms of the scale of this quake, we spoke with you in the 9 p.m. Eastern hour tonight about how big a 7.0 magnitude quake is. I would hope that you could repeat for our viewers, just so we can get some scale of how big an incident this is in the world of measured earthquakes.
Sure thing. A magnitude 7 earthquake is. I think before I compared it to the Loma Prieta earthquake, just because it's a familiar one. That was 1989. It struck in the Bay Area. It is an order of magnitude smaller than a magnitude 8, 2 orders of magnitude smaller than the magnitude 9 giant that struck off the coast of Sumatra. Magnitude 8 is about the size of the China earthquake, Sichuan earthquake a year ago. So this is it's a smaller quake, but it's still a very damaging one. And the thing about earthquakes is location, location, location. And this one was right under very vulnerable populated areas.
One of the other things we've heard about this particular quake in terms of its geological strength was that it wasn't very deep. It was considered to be centered about 5 or 6 miles below ground. How is that very deep, and what's the significance of that for the toll on the Earth's surface?
It was a very shallow earthquake, and that's very typical of this kind of earthquake. This struck on a strike-slip fault. That means the Earth's crust is moving side to side. It's what the San Andreas Fault is like, and those earthquakes do tend to be shallow. Shallow quake means that all of that energy is right up close to the surface. The deeper the earthquake, the more of the Earth's crust it has to travel through before it reaches anybody who's living on the surface. So a shallow quake is it may not be as widely felt as a deeper quake, but it means that the most severe shaking, all of the energy basically is going to be concentrated right there. And if there's population right there, that means they're taking it in the teeth.
One of the initial things that we heard that gave us some sense that this was an earthquake of great magnitude that was going to have major consequences was that there was a tsunami warning associated with that. That tsunami warning has since been canceled. But what are the sort of things that you need to know about an earthquake to know whether or not it is going to cause a tsunami?
Well, in this case, this one was it was right adjacent to the coast. It wasn't an undersea earthquake. Of course, those are the ones that we worry about the most. And there have been tsunami-generating earthquakes in the Caribbean. We've had, I think, a magnitude 8 earthquake back in the 1940s. Now, this one was onshore, but because that does, you're not displacing large amounts of water, so you're not likely to generate a tsunami. However, if you're going to have that much strong shaking right against the coast, you can't have submarine landslides, so those can generate a local tsunami. So that's why NOAA, the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration, their Tsunami Warning Center did issue a watch initially because of that threat from submarine landslides. When their tide gauge data came in from adjacent areas, and they saw that the largest wave that was being generated was, I think, 12 centimeters, they called that off. So that tsunami was canceled. So it's a good news, bad news. I mean, the good news was it wasn't underwater, therefore it didn't generate a tsunami. Bad news, it was underground, on land, which means the shaking was much more intense right where people are.
Dr. Applegate, one of the things that we've been able to hear from people who are in Haiti is the continuing psychological trauma of the aftershocks from this quake, the largest one that we've seen registering 5.9 in magnitude. Is there any way to predict for how long aftershocks will continue and what the expected magnitude of those aftershocks will be?
Well, in general, aftershocks follow a recognizable pattern in the sense that we expect that the largest aftershock is going to be about a magnitude smaller than the main shock. They will die out with time. However, when we saw that magnitude 5.9, it's about an order of magnitude smaller. However, so the likelihood will decrease with time, but there could still be additional aftershocks. damaging aftershocks in not just days, but even weeks or even months. It's one of the real challenges that earthquakes pose, particularly when you're in a situation like this with search and rescue needs. And I should say, there is the small possibility that the main shock was a foreshock to something larger, so that there could be another large earthquake. But again, that's a relatively low probability. But even the aftershocks, magnitude 5, 5.5, those are going to, further damage buildings that already have been heavily weakened.
David Applegate, Senior Science Advisor for Earthquake and Geologic Hazards at the U.S. Geological Survey. Again, Dr. Applegate, it's invaluable to have your expertise here. Thank you for joining us.
Absolutely.